Welcome to the Money, Mindset and Business podcast, where we talk about all things money, mindset and business with real life stories and real life people. Let's get into the episode. Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of Money, Mindset and Business podcast. I am your host, Leah Crowfoot. Thank you for coming in and listening today. Let me just tell you a little bit about what this podcast is for. As a generation or as a society, we don't openly talk about money at all. Yet, when it comes to being a business owner, money is a huge part of what we have to deal with and understand and be comfortable with, especially when it comes to charging money. So I wanted to create a platform where any business owner could come and share openly about their story that when it comes to money and how that's impacted them and their business. So I've created this space for you. And I would love if any of you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, please check the show notes below and we'll get in touch and we'll get you an episode recorded. So with it being the very first episode, I thought I would start the episode with my story, my whole money, mindset and business story. So let me give you an idea of where I am right now in this current situation. So I'm currently fully self-employed. I work for a business, Leah Crowfoot, business and finance strategist. So what I do is I support people in a one-to-one space to have a 6-month business and finance transformation for £4,500. What that is, you can find out. I'll put a link in the show notes. I'm not going to go into it on here. But I wasn't always this confident and happy about openly talking about what I do and how much I charge people. If you would have spoken to me just 2 years ago, I would never have thought of charging £4,500 to work with me one-to-one for 6 months. But now it just rolls off the tongue because I've done the work I needed to do to understand my worth and my value and overcome a multitude of money blocks that had basically formed within me based upon my life experiences and what's been going on in my past with regards to money. So let's go back to when I was around just before I started the teenage years. Because prior to that, the whole situation with regard to money, I don't think there was a lot going on there because I didn't understand it very much, and there wasn't much for me to think about with regard to money. Because when I was at primary school, when I was younger, we had everything that we needed. Not always everything that we wanted, but we always had everything that we needed, and it was never an issue. But when I was in year 8, so maybe 11 or 12 years old, my parents split. So from that point, it was a single parent family. So there was me, my mom, my elder sister, and my younger sister. And due to, well, it was before that we ended up living off benefits. But when my dad left, it was fully living off benefits because my mum was having to care for us by herself, and there was no jobs available for her to do during school hours at the time. So we were fully on benefits at this point. And when I look back at that time, what I remember is we were happy. We were definitely happy. We never went without with food or clothes or anything like that. But the impact that kind of came from that experience during secondary school up until recently, when I've started working through my money block issues and my mindset around money, was feeling different. Was feeling different to everybody else in my class. And that came down to predominantly because we were on benefits for one, we had free school bus passes, but I think that was partially due to how far away we lived from the school, because we lived just over 3 miles away, and my mum wanted us to go to a Catholic school, and the nearest Catholic school was over 3 miles away. So we got free bus passes, which I don't think we would have got if we weren't on benefits. But that was good. That saved my mum a fortune. But the biggest part was the free school meals, which is fine. I mean, that's what they're there for. But what the impact was on me was feeling different to everybody else. Was that every break time, instead of going out and playing, anybody who was on free school meals had to go and get a token by the school office. And there used to be a person sat there with this little box with everybody's school tokens in. And everybody who was on free school meals had to queue up in what was essentially the main entrance of the school. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of school children walking around because it was break time and everybody was going outside and doing this, that, and the other. So we were pretty much a big queue and everybody knew what we were there for. And what I remember is feeling embarrassed about the fact that I was different to everybody else. There was nobody else within my friendship group that was on free school meals. So having to go there at break time meant that I wasn't spending time with my friends, and I had to segregate myself from my friends because they didn't want to come and stand in a queue with me. Why would they? So yeah, from that point on, I always felt different, that I didn't belong, that I was strange compared to everybody else. And it wasn't until recently, when I started doing the work, that I realized how much of an impact that actually had on me. And this was all the way through up until I left school at the age of 16, which you could do then. I went straight into work-based training from school. But where my kind of money mindset issues flared up again was at the age of 20. I started my accountancy training. So I won't go into the details as to why, but I was living in Edinburgh on my own, and I ended up coming back here to the West Midlands, and I was jobless at the point. So I was like, right, what can I do? While I'm searching for a job, trying to find the right job, what can I do? So I decided to enroll on an AAT course, which is the Association of Accounting Technicians. So I enrolled on this course at Wolverhampton College, and I started going to college on night times to start my accountancy training, which was all great. It was all wonderful. I did my AAT and everything was fine. And then I moved on to the ACCA, which is the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants. And it was then that, again, I started to feel a little bit different to everybody else. Not because I was obviously having to get dinner tokens, etc. But when you go into a profession such as accountancy, there's this presumption that if you're an accountant, that you must be rich, because accountants are rich, right? But I never fit this bill. I never fit this kind of persona of an accountant, because I was never rich. I always had enough money to live to my means. So I was employed while I was training to be an accountant. So I was earning like £17,000 at that time, which was a while ago. So it might sound a little bit small now, but back then it was decent-ish. So yeah, I was training to be an accountant. I was working full time. But again, when I finished the qualification and I was like a fully qualified accountant, there was still this thought in my mind that I don't belong in this profession. I'm not rich like everybody else. I'm not having all this money and success like everybody else. Maybe I'm not a very good accountant. Maybe I'm just not good at it. Is that why why I don't have enough money? Is that why I don't have the same money as everybody else? And again, this kind of self-worth, self-value depletion came into my value. Because while I was training, I was saying to friends and families, like, yeah, I'm going to go self-employed when I'm qualified, because I don't want to work for other people. I want to work for myself. But what I found actually happened was I didn't have the confidence to go self-employed. And that was the same story for another 15 years after that. And it wasn't until the crazy situation that was COVID-19 that I finally found the courage to go self-employed, which I did in September 2020. But kind of going into business ownership, that opens up a massive kind of crazy mindset shift within you of you going out there and charging people for your time. And when you're first self-employed, that is really difficult, because you're like, well, I'm not worth anything. I was employed and I was earning, say, 12, 15, 20 pounds an hour. Can't charge any more than that. So you go out charging these little rates of money per hour for your time, and then you find that you're working ridiculous hours, all the hours under the sun, for this small amount of money, and out of that you've got your tax, national insurance, and business costs to pay, and you end up essentially working at a loss, or just about breaking even, without actually paying yourself any money, which is pretty much where I got to, because I was working, I was charging these small amounts of money, and I was not getting any money. So I was working harder, longer hours than I was employed, for no money. And how does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. So it was in 2021 when I started, like October 2021, we embarked on a journey of working with a business coach and a life coach. And that's where my whole money mindset and business journey really began. I started delving deep into my own self-worth and understanding where my values to do with money had come from, and trying to understand the stories that I was telling myself about money and about my worth had come from. And it was all these things that happened in the past that my brain had filed as, this is what you're worth. You're not worth more than just enough. So you can have just enough to live. And that was a reoccurring story from a very young age up until around 12, 18 months ago. You're only worth just enough. You're not worth extra. You're not worth anything more than just enough. So you're always going to have just enough to live off, and that's it. And that pretty much stopped me in my tracks. And it sent me on this whole journey of lack of self-belief, lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence. And it pretty much nearly destroyed me. If I'm honest, I nearly had a breakdown, because I was working ridiculous amounts of hours. I wasn't spending time with my husband. I wasn't spending time with my kids. I wasn't doing anything for myself. I wasn't seeing my friends. And what kind of life is that? Seriously. If you're self-employed, you don't want to have to work 24 hours a day and pretty much forget about everything else that's going on in your life just to work. That's not what it's all about. Being self-employed, for me anyway, means freedom. Means freedom to do what I want and be who I want to be, as well as supporting those or supporting the clients that I've got. So I pretty much went through my own life and business transformation. And this was last year where I went on this transformation, working with coaches and mentors and going through the NLP training myself and having my own personal breakthrough within that NLP training has got me to where I am now. when I am confidently turning around and saying, yes, I charge £4,500 to work with me one-to-one for 6 months. But what I promise you within that 6 months is that you will have a business and life transformation. I can promise you that. I can guarantee you that, because I've been through it myself. This is exactly what I did for myself last year. I went through a whole life and business transformation, working on my relationship with money, working on my mindset to do with money and being a business owner, and ensuring that I've got that balance that resonates with me within my life. So I have working time, I have time with my friends, I have time with my husband, I have time with my kids, and more importantly, I have time just for me to do what I want to do. Because without adding me into that equation, everything else is pointless, because the most important person in your life is you. Because without you, everything else is inconsequential. It doesn't matter. And you need to be on top form and fully loving who you are and what you do for everything else to matter, which is a very difficult concept to get your head around to begin with, but trust me, you'll get there. So this is where I am now. I work with clients on a one-to-one basis, but going through what I went through as a startup business owner and not having a lot of money and only ever earning just enough, a lot of support felt very much out of reach for me, and people wanting thousands of pounds to work with them one-to-one, like I do, because I'm worth it. But what this meant is I have now created something called the Becoming Balanced Academy, which is a monthly membership that I run that's only £49 a month. And this is geared towards those business owners who are in those first few years of business, but are still feeling lost, overwhelmed, and just need somebody to hold their hands as part of the journey. So I created this Becoming Balanced Academy, which is, like I've just said, £49 a month, where you get 2 monthly coaching calls and 4 weekly accountability calls, or possibly 5, depending on how many Fridays there are in the month. So every Friday we have an hour's accountability call where you can come on, do some work that you've been putting off, and have the support and advice that you need with me there with you. So if you are struggling with your bookkeeping, for instance, because I'm an accountant, I can help you with that. If you're struggling with your mindset, because I'm a coach, I can help with that. And if there's somebody in the room with us that can help you with what you're struggling with, we have a whole group of people on the accountability call that can support you. And I want to build this community of kind of like a support network for each other, with charging a minimal amount. It's open to everybody, and I would love anybody and everybody to come in there and just give it a try, if you're up for it. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now with my own business and what's going on with it and my whole mindset. And I have a completely balanced life. I work during the time when my kids are at school. I have some evenings where I need to work, but that's what it is. They're all planned into my life. I see my friends once a month. I have a date night once a month. We have every 2 weeks, we go to a National Trust property with the children, because we've got a National Trust membership. And weekends are all for my kids, because they're only young once and they're not going to be young forever. So I want to make sure I can make that time for them. So I'm going to close it off there. If you would like to know more or follow me on social media, check the show notes and I'll post all my links. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye.